Intermediate Plan of Action. 1. Undertake the change management process pursuant to the approved and ratified federal constitution. Based on historical accounts, the federalization of the Philippine Islands is an idea opined since centuries back by José P. Rizal, the Philippine national hero who wrote in an essay published in La Solidaridad in 1889–1890, "Once liberated, the islands will probably declare themselves a federal republic." This idea has been presented, proffered and proposed by individuals and groups alike under different administrations, hence though has yet to prosper. It is feasible for a new constitution to be in place, but whether or not the country has transitioned into federalism is a different story. As far as unintended consequences are concerned, it might be difficult to determine. The details of the reforms need to be presented first. What is involved in implementing new federal constitutional arrangements? Implementation is the final phase of constitution building in which new constitutional arrangements, including federalism, are put into effect. Implementation is critical. Without it, a constitution is only an agreement in principle, however well designed and inclusive the process by which it was made. It may be helpful to think of constitutional implementation as having three dimensions: technical implementation, interpretation and cultural change. Implementation is critical for effective constitution building, including transition to federalism or any other significant form of devolution. Where a federation is formed by devolution within a formerly unitary state, this may be a particular challenge. In some cases, sub-national units need to be created from scratch, although in others, existing local divisions may be able to be adapted for the purpose. Administrative departments need to be established, or transferred from the center, or both. Officers in departments that once operated in the national capital now need to move to regional centers elsewhere in the country. Arrangements for the receipt and expenditure of public monies need to be made, in the interests of accountability. All of these steps are necessary, but not sufficient. Sub-national institutions need to work to deliver responsive government to the people in the area, who in turn need to hold them to account. This democratic relationship, between people and public institutions, is key to the success of a move to a federal constitutional system. Questions about the distribution of power and resources should be resolved in or through the Constitution as well. There can be some flexibility in these arrangements, to adjust power and resources through agreement in the future, but the essentials need to be put in place by the Constitution itself and not left to the implementation phase. Transition to a new system. All constitutions make some provision for transition, to bridge the gap between the old and the new, often over a prescribed period. In some cases, an interim constitution assists with the process of transition as well. In a move to a new federal constitution, a period of transition is important. Power, resources and, perhaps, infrastructure need to be transferred from one level of government to another. Institutions may need to be established and elections held. Provision needs to be made to ensure that existing laws continue, even after authority for making and changing them is transferred to another level of government. This will all take time and trust between the levels of government that the transition will not be unduly delayed. Different options for structuring a transition to federalism include the following. Engage in sub-national capacity building before the Constitution comes into effect, as far as possible, so that power can be transferred quickly once the final Constitution comes into effect. Provide for a shortish transition period, subject to interim arrangements, during which sub-national institutions are put in place and other necessary steps taken so that power can be transferred on a fixed date. Provide for a staggered transition to federalism, once sub-national unit capacity is adequately developed. In this case, it may be useful to create an independent procedure for monitoring the process or for resolving disputes over whether the requirements for the transfer of power have been met. National ownership and popular support. Implementation of new federal arrangements will be easier if the process and outcomes are fully owned by political leaders and the people as a whole, as the Constitution is made. National ownership in this sense means that the requirements of the new Constitution are widely understood and that there is commitment to it, by political actors and the people to whom they will be accountable, at both levels of government. How this is achieved will vary between different federations. On any view, however, in a federal context, National ownership requires involvement and commitment by political leaders and people in the regions that will become federated units as well as at the center, and in the capital city. Ultimately, support for a change to a federal form of government needs to come from the people, who hold government to account at both levels, to make federal democracy a reality. An adequately inclusive constitution-making process should assist in this regard. Properly designed processes for public information and education, both before and after the Constitution comes into effect, should assist as well. The tasks of developing an understanding of how the new arrangements will operate should begin then. Preparation can begin for the reorganization of the administration. If sub-national constitutions are needed, the process and timelines for settling these can be agreed in advance. The text of the Constitution should be settled with implementation in mind. Provisions for transition should be carefully tailored to overcome obvious challenges to implementation. Any formal procedures to encourage and assist implementation may be included in the Constitution as well. Preparation and training transition to federalism from a more centralized form of government affects the functions of a wide range of actors at both levels of government, including legislators, administrators, and courts. Preparation for the transition, through training or other means of introducing the requirements of the new system, may be useful to assist stakeholders at all levels to understand what to expect after the Constitution comes into effect. Ideally, such activities should be problem-based, drawing on the terms of the new Constitution, to demonstrate the issues that may arise, in the light of experience elsewhere, and to explore options for resolving them. However, the question is how long should the transition period be? The switch to a federal system of government should be carried out in 5 phases spanning 15 years to avoid disruption to the economy's growth momentum, the National Economic and Development Authority, NEDA, said. The first phase, or 1 year of the transition, should be devoted to doing spatial analysis of federated regions and their socio-economic profiles, accounting of government workforce and functions, and mapping of existing laws, regulations, and policies. This can be accompanied by an extensive review and amendment of provisions of the 1987 constitutions that have limited the country's opportunities to achieve inclusive growth and development. The second phase, or 5 years of laying the foundation for federalism, must include preparing the regions and rationalizing government structures and functions. This should include an extensive review and amendment, as necessary, of the local government code and the administrative code. During this period, a transitional period charter should be adopted and the Federal Transition Commission must be established. The transitional government can be activated in the third phase, which spans 3 years. During this time, the government will be prepared for genuine devolution. NEDA proposed that the operationalization of 5 pilot federated regions based on readiness and willingness be done in the fourth phase for 5 years. During the last phase of the transition government should be deactivated along with the ratification of the amended constitution. The transition government should ratify the amended constitution for full transition. The regional development councils may serve as interim regional governments. The Bangsamoro and the Cordillera Administrative Region, CAR, substates, within the bigger Philippine state, make the country already a de facto but incomplete federal state. It's just a matter of expanding it.
Kami po ay nasa partido ng Katipunan Kamalayan Kayong Manggi na nagsusulong ng federalismo upang mabago ang sistema ng ating bansa, na ang ibig sabihin ay ipalapit ang ating pamahalaan sa tao.
Tumitindig kami sa isang buo, hindi lamang programa, hindi lamang plano, kundi na isang vision po para sa ating bansa. At iyan po ay nakapaloob sa Puno Bayanihan Federal Constitution. Ang kailangan na lamang natin, ito ay i-hide natin sa ating mga kababayan, at kung ito po ay kanilang tatanggapin at yayakapin, nangangahulugan po na ito na po yung bagong bahay nila na gusto nilang tirahan. Eventually kasi, the system will collapse. Whether we like it or not, it has outlived its purpose, it will collapse. On the other hand, kami naman po ngayon, biglang bagong partido na talagang philosophy-based at economic, social, politically oriented, ay mayroong sinusulong na malinaw na programa kung paano natin bibigyan ng direksyon ng ating bansa.